fewer and fewer people to produce the things that are needed. That we're moving into an age when that dreadful punishment of the Garden of Eden, by the sweat of your brow, a punishment from God, is going to be lifted off the backs of men. And that terrified the world, that thought. And instead of facing up to what was happening, when you think about it, the machine did the very opposite. The first machines that were built, instead of liberating people, were actually put into the cotton mills of Lancashire. And as the machines came in one side of the factory, the door at the other end opened and people just got the sack. They weren't needed. And they stumbled out into a new world. A new world where production was increasing and more people were starving because they hadn't got jobs. What we're talking about now, this huge unemployment, we've been smothering up for 200 years, you know. It's not something new. It's just got more and more intense. But it started then. The production of Britain rose and the starvation of Britain increased. Isn't it ridiculous? And workers scratched their heads and said, what's the answer? The answer is, let's get rid of the machine. So they had gangs, went round Britain, in the dead of night with huge jackhammers, broke into the factories and tried to smash the machines to pieces. The Luddites. They couldn't hold it up. It was coming in so fast. There was an avalanche of technology. So the next development was much more frightening. There was a little man called Karl Marx sitting in Britain. That's where he was, in the middle of that Industrial Revolution, writing a book in the British Museum called The Communist Manifesto. And if you look at that book, it was written as a response to this new development. And he says it was not the machine that was to blame. It was ownership of the machine. And if we could produce a new scientific world where we got rid of all private property, how could one man exploit his brother? So let us build a revolutionary machine that will sweep the world and all the institutions that have shaped that previous world, including the Christian church. It's got to be broken by violence on the scrap heap of history and a new scientific age of equality put in its place. And you know, if you're starving, and you've got your kids working down, sloshing through the mines underground as they were in that Industrial Revolution. Little kids of 7 and 8, down thousands of feet in the darkness. Or your wives were working 16 hours a day for the price of bread. You know, you listen to anything. And that movement has now taken a third of the world, more than that. But it provides the thinking, the teaching, the learning in our part of the world. University, broadly, the economic teaching we're getting is one variety or another of Marxism. Sometimes unconsciously, sometimes quite consciously. But what was the Christian answer? The Christian said to those who are sloshing through the water, this world is a vale of tears. We're not meant to enjoy ourselves in it. Just think about the world to come. But it's a bit tough to accept that if your kids are starving. And so we just blundered on economically, trying to fit into our economic system two totally impossible things. One said more and more and more technology. The second said full employment for everybody, and he who shall not work, neither shall he eat. The Christian was divided on this question himself. And if you're going to try and run an economic system with those two totally impossible things in it, you've only got one question to answer. What are you going to do with all the production? And you have to shape a certain type of economic system to keep the thing going. And that is an economic system that produces more and more and more, whether it is required or not. So we launched a technological attack on God's environment, which was really not husbandry at all. It was now destruction. We began to try and keep going by producing more and more and more. You look at technological societies that have played this game harder and longer than any other, and you see the most destructive. Communism is destructive, but look at capitalism. Look at the United States. It had to make economic units that produced more to survive. So in the space of 20 years, they shifted 16 million little farmers off the soil because they were told, now your farms are no longer producing it. You've got to produce more to keep going. America was built around the Homestead Act, which was a Christian concept. Just a little bit of property for each family. That was gone. So you amalgamated farms together, and then you amalgamated those together again, and finally you produced something called an agribusiness, which was run more like a government department than a farm, and you had on huge great tracts of land people with white coats walking around, and you had a department of chooks, and a department of cabbages, and a department of cows, and the whole thing's crashing now because you can't run farms like that, and the little farm is coming back. But what a way to learn. And what happened to 16 million people, that's more than the whole population of Australia, just heaved out of one social economic environment and dumped down in another. Where did they go? They still had to live, they still had to have this thing called a job. So they went to the big cities, and the big cities, instead of being nice places, as they used to be, became awful. And in came a man called Whelan the Wrecker with a ball on the end of a chain, and he began to knock down the little suburban homes. And up in their places went high-rise flats. And you began to pack people into those like chooks into a chook pen. And we're doing this all over Sydney and Melbourne as though it's progress. What a way to bring up kids. You can't keep a puppy, you can't keep a kitten. Most of them you can't even keep a budgerigar. I heard of one not so long ago in Canada. They forgot to put stairways in it. All they had were electric lifts. Family after family in tears. And if the power went off or you had a power strike, you were just trapped in your rat hole like a rat in a rat trap. Power went off in one area for 3 days. So they had a helicopter flapping up and down outside this building trying to throw sausages in through the windows. The ones we have in Melbourne and Sydney, we have 4 or 5 social workers now attached to each building simply because of the breakdown of the family in those conditions. It wasn't terribly long ago. We had the Minister for Housing in the Soviet Union shown round as a privileged guest over one block of flats in Melbourne. He said it was better than anything they had in Russia. And the very day he went round, some poor, wretched woman threw herself off the top of one building and committed suicide. They've had a number. She said, I can't take it any longer. Now, somehow you can survive living in an environment like that. You come out, down into the ant heap down below, and from Monday to Friday, there's a huge race trying to get this thing called a job. And away they go into industry if you're lucky enough to have a job in industry. And in industry, there's only one problem. How do we get rid of this mountain of stuff that we're producing? We've got machines now which at the touch of a button can produce in minutes what it took days to produce a few years ago. So we begin to devise totally destructive ways of shifting it. First thing is export. Export it, export or die.